morning. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Russell Virgin. I am the Family and Community Services Director for Mountainland Head Start. We're a nonprofit organization based out of here in Provo, and our mission is to empower children and families to succeed. And we serve about 756 children and families throughout Juab, Utah, and Wasatch counties every year. And what we provide are free preschool services or no-cost preschool services for children, and then social services for their families. I want to tell you a little bit more about what we do at Head Start, but I want to put it in the context of an experience that I had about 7 years ago. I have 4 daughters, ages 9, 7, 4, and 1.5. Well, 7 years ago, I had just graduated with a degree in marriage, family, and human development from BYU. And my oldest at the time was about 2 years old. And I remember she was a sweet, compliant, obedient child till one evening I remember sitting there on her bed and I'm trying to get her to sleep. And she had moved into a big kid bed and she was having a hard time staying still. She was jumping all over her bed. Her gross motor development wasn't quite developed, so I was worried she was going to get hurt. I was doing everything I could do to persuade her to lie down and go to sleep, and nothing was working. Now, what happened next, wouldn't it be a big deal if it weren't so subtle and scary in the potential that it had? As I'm listening to my thoughts and I'm watching her, I start to tell myself stories about her. And we call these labels oftentimes. I started telling myself, you know what, she doesn't care about me or what I want. Or she's stubborn, she just wants to do what she wants to do. And as I'm thinking through this, I recognize that these labels are really dangerous. And labels are dangerous for a couple reasons, if they're negative labels. First and foremost, they help us to kind of change how we view the world, and they become a magnifying glass for what we see and the stories we tell ourselves about people's behavior. So if we put these negative labels on ourselves or others, then we start to see their behavior and in a way that supports that label. So if I start labeling my daughter as stubborn or not caring about me, every behavior I see is magnified, and all I see is the negative that reinforces that label that I have for her. And even worse is when we start to say things that have permanence, right? That she is stubborn, she is uncaring. And when I start to put these permanent labels on her, again, it doesn't allow for growth and development. Luckily, that evening I had a good parenting moment. And I sat there and I remembered some of the cool things I had learned in my degree, that children develop, they grow. And I realized that this isn't an issue of stubbornness. She was struggling with what we call impulse control. She had these strong internal desires to do something that she wanted to do. But inside of her, she really wanted to listen and obey. And as I thought on that, I knew that was true. And so it changed the way I acted towards her. And so what does this have to do with Head Start, and what does this have to do with what we try and do with families? Well, first and foremost, again, our mission is to help and empower children and families to succeed. And we work with some of the families that have the strongest and most negative labels attached to them, from at risk to in poverty, and at worse, like lazy, bad parents, unmotivated. And we want to change those labels. And so first, before children ever enter our program, we work with the parents. We sit down with them and we orient them to what the program is, what we're trying to achieve, and we start sending messages like, you are your child's primary educator. You are their lifelong educator. You can be successful. You can teach them. You have strengths, and we'll go through their strengths with them. We'll analyze them and talk about them and see how they can support and lift others. So we're sending a completely different message. That was the first thing that I did to myself, was I had to recognize reality. She wasn't having a stubbornness issue. This was a development issue. Okay? These families aren't lazy or unmotivated. They have barriers that are keeping them from being as successful as they want to be, but they can overcome them, they can grow. There's no permanence here. And then we'll work with them, we'll try and identify what are their needs. So we start changing their reality. So we change their vision of their reality, and then we change the reality to be what we hope it will become. So we'll analyze what their needs are. What are they struggling with? What are the barriers to their success? What are keeping them from being engaged and involved with their children? And we'll come up with goals and objectives to overcome those barriers. And we'll form a partnership that will work with them throughout the entire year to move forward. And then included in that, obviously, is we're going to work with their children. Just like me, sometimes we see our children's behavior and we attach stories and labels to them. And we want to make sure that they understand their child's development enough that they can step back and say, hey, this is not my child being a bad child. This is a developmental issue. And if I understand their development, then I can behave differently to support and change their behavior. So parents are coming on board, they're becoming engaged, they're understanding their children. And then we provide preschool services for the kids. And in our preschool services, they will learn everything that they need to know to be able to enter kindergarten ready to succeed. Cognitive development, social emotional development, everything that they need to know. We'll look at their health. We do screenings. We work with the doctors and dentists to make sure that they are getting the screenings and the evaluations they need to make sure there's no vision problems, that they're not sitting there unfocused in class because they have a cavity that's aching. They're not exhausted. And then we provide nutrition services. We provide food for them every day when they come to class, twice, either a breakfast and a lunch or a lunch and a snack in the afternoon. And these are high nutrient dense foods that they can experiment. If they're not eating it at home, then they're getting it here for the first time. And then we partner with the family throughout the year to move these children forward. We've seen so much success working with this approach to helping both the parent and the child and engaging the parent in their child's education. But it helps us to first and foremost remove those labels that are keeping them back. It keeps them from moving forward and reaching a higher trajectory. And so by removing those labels and then altering and changing their reality by helping them to move forward with their goals, then we can have an impact. And I'm grateful to be involved with that. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.